Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And we have a lot to get to on tonight's episode, including Colton Cowser not winning American League Rookie of the Year and the Orioles' decision to protect Brandon Young and Cade Stroud from the Rule 5 draft with 40-man roster spots. And we will get to all of that on tonight's show. But first, Orioles on the Verge is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA and college basketball, NHL to UFC and MMA. Head to BetOnline today. Get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. And Bob, I have to welcome you back. Been out for a couple of weeks. Great to have you back here.
Yeah, it's great to be back. 15-day IL is back in action. Yeah, it was a rough stretch. Had some severe pneumonia, was in a hospital a little bit, but feeling better. Glad to be back, get back to normal. Just in time for the winter meetings a couple weeks away. So
we're glad that you made a recovery, and I think it's fitting that you have the chance to do tonight what you do it at the top of a lot of episodes, and that's welcome a new patron to our community.
Yeah, got to pay these hospital bills. So thank you, Seth English, for joining up as a paid member, single A. Really appreciate the support. So thank you, Seth.
As a quick reminder, you can join our Patreon community for as little as $3 a month. Become a paying member. We will be rolling out our top 50 countdown for our top prospect list soon. And new this year, if you are an existing patron, you can give the gift of a Patreon membership to the Orioles fan in your family or in your circle of friends. So head over to our Patreon to look into details for that. But that is a new offering this year. And now we'll get into probably the biggest story of the week in Birdland since Colton Cowser did not win Rookie of the Year, which we'll get into in a moment. But the Orioles made a decision on Tuesday night to protect two players from the upcoming Rule 5 draft with 40-man roster spots. One of the moves was not a surprise at all, and that was the decision to award a 40-man roster spot to Brandon Young, the minor league pitcher of the year, and a guy who right now is at least on the cusp of the major league rotation. And then the second player that was protected was maybe a little bit of a sleeper, maybe a bit of a surprise if you look purely at his stats from last year, and that is reliever Cade Stroud. Now, Stroud did have some rough patches in AAA Norfolk last year after being promoted from AA, and before 2024, because of injuries and some inconsistencies, had always seemed to be one of those guys whose stuff often did not match the results. You're hearing good things about how some of his pitches looked, but it wasn't necessarily backed up by the results you were seeing on the field. It seemed like in 2024, he at least closed the gap on that, and the Orioles ultimately decide to protect him from the Rule 5 draft of the 40-man spot. So, Nick, I'll start with you. You and I had a chance to preview this last week, and we talked then about how Young was a lock. And that Stroud, on the other hand, was one of those names that at first glance might not seem like a standout choice to be protected, but there could be reasons for the Orioles to protect him from the Rule 5 draft, and that's ultimately what they did. So what are your thoughts on that decision?
With Brandon Young, yeah, I think everybody had that as the lock. It is kind of like a proud dad moment almost, seeing him added to the 40-man roster. It's just really cool to see, like, that was a guy who, like, from the moment the Orioles signed him in 2020 after the draft, like, I watched 2 innings of one of his starts and was like, that guy's got a path. I assume throw him in the bullpen. You look at his height, this disgusting curveball he had in Louisiana Lafayette. Throw him in the bullpen, let him fly up the ranks, see what happens. He could get there pretty quickly. But he exceeded expectations when he was down at Delmarva, exceeded expectations in Aberdeen. Was scared to see what Brandon Young was going to look like after missing almost virtually 2 years with that second Tommy John surgery. But he came back and the velo was good, wasn't walking guys, and that continued in 2024. He had one of the lowest, I think the lowest walk rate of his career this past year. And like, it's we'll see what his role is next year. I don't think he's going to be in like some hard competition for a rotation spot. I say that hoping that, Snell, Freed, Burns, one of those guys in an Orioles uniform, multiple other arms are in an Orioles uniform. But yeah, it's great for Brandon Young. I do have some things that we can talk about with his numbers that I saw earlier that do caution me a little bit, but super happy for him. With Cade Stroud, that was the shocker. I threw out Peter Van Loon as maybe if they go deep as my like deep sleeper pick. I was not expecting Cade Stroud just because he was Rule 5 eligible last year, right? And didn't get protected or signed by anybody else, obviously. But yeah, like that's a guy who, I mean, go back to 2022, I think, when John Mioli first brought his name up as like, I'm making calls and this guy is, people are telling me he should be a top 30 Orioles prospect because he came back from injury. He's pumping 99 miles per hour in Aberdeen in that crazy season they had in 2022, making the playoffs. Like Stroud was really impressing a lot of guys. And I don't know, it's kind of been the same story this year with Stroud, where if you look at, go back to 2023, and I know we talked about this specifically, I remember, a year ago. But if you look at his season in 2023 with Bowie, the stat line wasn't great, but he ended the year on a very high note. The walks significantly decreased in the second half of the season, hoping that could carry into 2024, knowing that the Orioles are high on him and this guy's got some pretty nice stuff. But 2024, you look at his stat line, still not that great. But at the same time, you look, he closed out the year on a high note. His final 13 innings of the season, he only walked one batter. So like it was surprising, sure. He's a 27-year-old reliever from the 2019 draft class. We'll see if he survives the offseason, but there's stuff to like there.
Yeah, listening to you guys last week talk about the possibility of the outside shot guys, and Stroud was definitely one of them. Was still surprising to see it officially announced. I expected it to be just Brandon Young, and congrats to him and Cade. Obviously, this is a very cool moment especially a player who's not a high draft pick and expected to get to this point. Very cool moment. But yeah, Stroud, the stuff is obviously excellent. They've obviously loved his stuff for a long time. I loved that, Nick, you tweeted out the Stuff Plus from TJ Stats, who I'm hoping to get on the podcast later this offseason. But you can see why, even though despite the numbers, 6.80 ERA, 1.85 whip in 41 innings in AAA, like you said, the way he ended the year, 17 strikeouts, 1 walk, 2.08 ERA over his final 13 innings. But his Stuff Plus, he's got an average four-seamer, 96 miles per hour, grades out about average, but then curveball above average, 104 Stuff Plus, 59 grade on it. Cutter, 108 Stuff Plus, 66 grade, so that's nearing plus plus. And then the sweeper, 121 Stuff Plus and a 69 grade, which is just elite pitch right there. So for average to above average, some elite pitches, like you can see the mix there. It's all about command and control, which he showed at the end of the year. He's 27 years old, so it's now or never. So, but at least he's a reliever with great stuff, which we know the Orioles like, and he has 3 options. So that's something that the bullpen could use moving forward as they revamp it a little bit. So very happy for Stroud. I'm excited to see what he can do. Hopefully gets off to a good start and can build on his 2024 the way he ended. And yeah, Brandon Young, what else is there to say? The guy was excellent immediately after his second Tommy John surgery. It looked great in AA, moved up to AAA where it's supposed to be a little bit tougher to with the balls and strikes and the challenge system. It's supposed to be a little bit tougher on pitchers. He just got better than he did in AA. It was walking less, striking out more. Great ERA over, I think, a 3.57 ERA for the season as a whole over 111 innings. There was a shot he got a cup of coffee in the majors at the end of 2024. So not a surprise, but very cool. Very, very solid depth to have going into spring training. Like Nick said, hopefully the Orioles are signing an ace as well as another pitcher or two to come in here and have a really deep starting rotation in 2025. But guys like Povich, McDermott, and Young are huge to have just sitting there in AAA ready to come up at a moment's notice.
Bob, I think you brought up a good point with Stroud, which is that now the Orioles have an optionable pitcher in their bullpen mix. And I don't think Stroud's going to crack the opening day roster, even with the bullpen the way it is right now. I just don't really see a path forward for him. But if he can go down and over the first month or so that the numbers he put up at the end of last season were not an outlier, and then he really has made adjustments to AAA hitters, I think he stands a good chance of getting to the big leagues. I guess what I wonder, and I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts on this, is that how much of this do you think was maybe motivated by the Orioles believing that Stroud can be a near-term answer, even if it's not on opening day of next year, versus maybe he's not going to be in the mix right away, but if we don't protect him, someone else will take him, and there's some bullpen depth and some roster flexibility that we're not going to have.
I think that's a decent part because, yeah, he is 27 years old. He has been in AAA, ended the year strong with his stuff. Very good chance that someone takes a flyer on him, and maybe he can make it all year out of a bullpen role at the back end of a bad team's bullpen. I mean, you'd hate to lose out on that. And we've seen even just the guys that the Orioles have targeted in trades, Gregory Soto, Sir Anthony Dominguez, like they value stuff over command, it seems like, or at least they think they can get more out of their command with whatever they're doing in-house. But yeah, I think just Stroud is a pure stuff guy, and I think they value that because, look, with Felix Bautista, another journeyman who had ridiculous stuff, they were able to hone it. Boom, best closer in baseball until he got hurt. And Stroud is, again, if you can get that command locked down, or at least good enough the way it was at the end of the year, that's an elite arm right there out of your bullpen. And you don't want to give up on that opportunity. Obviously, the Orioles don't. I don't know if I would have protected Stroud if I was in their shoes, but we can see, I think, just from the way they've done things in the recent past, why they would protect him.
Yeah. Yenier Cano, another guy. That was a trade. You target him, but the numbers were god-awful. But the stuff was disgusting. Look at how that turned out. Not saying Stroud is going to turn into Cano or Felix Bautista, obviously. I think it's more so, the fact that the stuff is really good. Like, it's if somebody's saying, oh, he's got nasty stuff, he literally does. Bob read off the numbers there. I think this is a case of this isn't going to prevent the Orioles from going off and be like, oh, we protected Stroud. He's on the 40-man. That's one of our bullpen additions. We're good. Maybe we can take another flyer on a waiver claim later on in the offseason. No, I think if the opportunity presents itself and if they're targeting a free agent reliever, much better option than Craig Kimbrell, hopefully, pray to God. But like that's not going to – Cade Stroud's not going to stop them from signing bullpen help or going off and even trading for a bullpen option that they are targeting. This is just a case of he's going to get selected more than likely because he has AAA experiences. He has the nasty stuff. So another team would probably look to take a flyer on him. So let's go ahead and protect him. And, if the way the offseason shakes out, if there's not a spot for him and they have to DFA him and try to sneak him through waivers and he doesn't, unfortunately, that's the business part of all this. But for right now, I think it's just a matter of let's protect him and let's see how the offseason shakes out. And hopefully, I agree. I don't think he's going to be on the opening day roster, but he's got options. He's going to be in AAA. He's there in case something happens.
I want to get into some players that the Orioles didn't protect in a moment, but Nick, I want to go back to you to follow up on something you had said about Brandon Young early on, which is that maybe there are some stuff in his numbers that raise a little bit of concern, even with him coming off the season he had.
Yeah, just let me pull it up here, make sure I got everything. Yeah, look, I love Brandon Young. We speak very highly of Young. I amazed that he is on the 40-man roster. Absolutely love it. But when I was looking at some of this other stuff, you look back to what Lance Brzdowski wrote about Young in early 2024. This was when he was in Bowie. And it was the fastball stuff plus was 115. Overall stuff plus was 107. That's very good, right? 20 inches of induced vertical break on the four-seam fastball. That's elite territory. The unique delivery that he had. So it's 20 inches of vertical break with this unique delivery that guys like his height, like don't release it at this point. It's the math that I don't understand the math, but the math is what it is. The physics is what it is. And he got insane whiff rates on the fastball because it was a lot of unique traits combining together, right? The changeup he threw in the strike zone at 23% above league average when he was in Double A, and was another supreme swing and miss pitch. And then again, the slider, according to Lance, Grayson Rodriguez and Dean Kramer shaped but needed more velo, right? Then I was looking, and I believe when he was on the show, he even warned about this. Like, things could change when he gets the AAA ball, and they did. I don't know if I can't remember if he talked about this already. I can't remember when he was on the show and if Young was already in AAA or not, but he did lose a couple of inches of vertical break on the fastball. And that 115 stuff plus that was in AA went down to 91 in AAA. The changeup did not get the whiffs when he was in AAA either. It was like 21%, which was the least amount of whiffs among his main offerings. The curveball still a very, very good pitch. 102 stuff plus, which is awesome. But yeah, it's why I kind of think when you're looking at like what role Brandon Young has, I think this is a guy who he was an undrafted free agent out of a mid-major program, and now he's on the 40-man roster. That's a huge win. But I think if you're looking at like expectations for Brandon Young, could he compete for a number 5 spot? Yes, absolutely. There's still a lot to like here. I'm not trying to bring Brandon Young down. I'm as big as hype man there is. But just I think this is a guy who realistically is a guy who, again, like Stroud, he's not going to stop the Orioles from going off and signing starting pitchers or trading for starting pitchers, but he's going to be really good depth for you. And hopefully maybe a little bit more out of the bullpen, maybe down the road is kind of where I envision him in his role this year.
Yeah, that's very good points. I do remember Lance bringing that up, that the Major League / AAA ball can have different effects on what these guys are doing with their pitches. So hopefully, this offseason he's spending time just working on the AAA / Major League ball and trying to get what he was doing with the minor league ball to do with the Major League ball. Time will tell. But even if it stays the way it is, like you said, just very, very solid depth to have there. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's a good level set of expectations for both guys because Young, you could look at the stats or you could look at the age and feel like, okay, he was older for the level, or look out on the bright side and say, oh, he just came off a really solid season. The fact is that he is good quality depth, and the Orioles, on the whole, are better off with him on the 40-man roster than they are leaving him unprotected. But I agree with both of you. That does not prevent them from going out and getting a starter or even 2 starters this offseason. Now, as you and I talked about, Nick, last week, the class of Rule 5 eligible players for the Orioles this year was deep, but the players themselves individually had a lot of question marks, whether it's because of injuries or a lack of experience at the upper levels of the minor leagues. So it's not surprising that a few players who had borderline cases were left off. So someone like Alex Pham, who's put together back-to-back good seasons, but has yet to pitch above the AA level, was not protected. Juan Nunez, who most outlets nationally have ranked in the top 20 to top 25 of the farm system, has excellent stuff, but just suffered shoulder injury last season, hasn't pitched above high A. He was not protected. Edgar Portes, who might be one of the fastest rising arms in this system, really good stuff. Again, has not pitched above A ball. He was Rule 5 eligible and left unprotected. And you could go even deeper into the list to look at guys like Keegan Gillies, Tyler Burts, who looked pretty good in the Arizona Fall League, as we're going to talk about later on this week. And there's some interesting names when you get beyond Young and Stroud that don't have 40-man roster spots now. And the Orioles are, in theory, at risk of losing in the Major League phase of the Rule 5 draft. But to what extent does that risk exist in your mind with these guys?
Not much, to be honest with you. Like we said, or you guys have said, I wasn't here. I listened. I thought I was there in my head. Yeah, these guys are all pitchers we like. We like them a lot. But I think, honestly, I just think the Rule 5 has evolved in the past handful of years where you're not seeing the guys taken from A ball, AA. You're seeing more polished pitchers that are getting taken, and even just less pitchers in general. I feel like less players are getting taken at all. But that's why I think you see Brandon Young, AAA, Cade Stroud, AAA, protected, because they're right there. The gap between AA and high A to the majors is extreme. Like we've heard the gap between AAA and the majors is as wide as it's ever been. How do you think it is even lower than that? So I think it's not even that big of a risk, but a calculation where, like you said, a lot of these guys haven't even pitched in AA yet. Maybe Pham is like the one that's most at risk because he did pitch a full season plus at AA. But he doesn't really. I like him a lot. I don't think he has really like that one dominant pitch where you can put him in a bullpen and have him survive the year. I think we've seen guys like Grayson Rodriguez and Kyle Bradish have extreme adjustment periods. So I think a guy like Pham is going to be even more so, and doesn't make me think less of him as a prospect than we already did. But these guys, I just don't think there's really much risk at all that they're going to get taken. And if they did, I don't think they're going to make it the whole year.
Yeah, like we said last week, a lot of these guys, Portes is a fantastic pitching prospect, very slept on, I think, but he was an A-ball. Like you said, he's not getting picked. Juan Nunez, saw his name a lot yesterday, and it's like I didn't realize MLB Pipeline. I don't read MLB Pipeline like ever. I don't like their stuff, but apparently he's the number 8 prospect according to MLB Pipeline, which is mind blowing. I like it, to be honest, but I hate to admit that. But like again, it was a shoulder injury where he missed pretty much all year. He only had 30 something innings or something like that. No team's going to take Juan Nunez. I truly don't believe that. And Pham, yeah, for all the reasons we mentioned last week, he's already like peak Alex Pham is a guy who I think if he were to get to the major leagues, like I kind of feel like his role is probably more as a reliever already, like maybe a fringe back end starter. Like it again, like Bob said, there's not that one elite tool. Like if there is a guy who I look at and be like, I could see a team maybe taking a risk here. I don't know what team, but like, and I know the numbers weren't good, but Keegan Gillies, at least he's got that height. He's got the splitter. He's got the velo. There's a lot to like with Keegan Gillies. Yeah, he didn't get to AAA. Yes, he doesn't have the numbers, but like there are traits there that really, really stand out. And so when I think about the Rule 5 draft, that's what I'm looking at. I don't know what some of these teams are looking at and what they value, but like I could see Gillies possibly being that guy. Otherwise, I really don't see anyone else that I think the Orioles are in danger of losing. I don't know if, again, the Justin Armbruster thing is just, I don't know what to think. I don't know if, I know we touched on this in passing, so I don't know if Bob, you have thoughts about Armbruster or if you've thought about it more, Zach, but he's Rule 5 eligible. He wasn't protected. They could protect him in the minor league phase of the Rule 5 draft. That's still a thing where a lot of these guys will be put on that list, but like, is Armbruster even a guy who they leave unprotected in the minor league phase and he's not in the organization next year? I don't know, but I don't know if I see him being selected in the major league phase. I think the Orioles made 2 solid choices, and I could see a couple of these guys, they're going to lose 2 or 3, probably at least 2, I would say, in the minor league phase, but the major league phase, I think they're pretty good.
Yeah, Gillies is a good call. Yeah, he's got the height, like you said, velocity, splitter. Yeah, he was a little up and down, shaky in AA, but we know the potential's there. So I think he's probably the most at risk. That's a good call. Armbruster, so tricky. I feel like he's a guy you got to turn loose in the bullpen, see how he does out of there at some point, because I know they like his stuff. I know he's better than he showed last year, but something's got to give at some point. So, yeah. And, hey, let's get Trey McGow back in here. Bring him home. Could be our Rule 5 selection. He's available, and he pitched pretty darn well last year. I hated to give him up for Eloy Jimenez, but maybe the time is right to bring him home.
I would not hate that at all, and I agree with Nick that Gillies is the one guy that I look at and think I could see a team taking a flyer on him. It's going to have to be a team, though, that goes into this season. And I don't say this because I don't believe some of the hype with Gillies. I absolutely do. But to take a guy who is yet to pitch above AA and who had kind of mixed results last year and believe that he has a chance of sticking in the major leagues all year probably means your bullpen is in really bad shape going into spring training. So, to the extent that you're going to track the Rule 5 drafts because it ends in like 10 minutes, the major league phase at least, to the extent you're going to track it, if he doesn't go off the board within the first few picks, he's probably not going to go off the board. You're probably safe from him being chosen in the major league phase. Honestly, if it was an upside thing, I could see Pham or Portes going, but Portes just doesn't have the experience. And Pham, I think Nick said it accurately that for as good as he's been, we kind of know where his ceiling is, which is bullpen most likely, possibly back end starter. And we're again talking about someone who is not pitched above AA. You're probably going to look elsewhere for help because although I will admit that I haven't taken that deep of a dive into the list of players that are left unprotected by the other 29 teams, generally speaking, there's decent AAA type depth left over, and you can find someone that has similar traits as Alex Pham, and that person will have had innings in AAA that Pham does not.
And take this for what you will. Baseball America has already got their first version of their intriguing, top Rule 5 options. No Orioles on that list. So it's not like, oh man, these prospects, they aren't that good. No, that's a good sign. I again, like I said last week, I need to know, like, wink wink, I need to know that minor league protected list.
Yeah, love seeing that.
I need that because I'm looking at this and like I could see you got like guys like Kyle Furbisky, Tyler Birch, Dylan Hyde, Houston Roth, Gillies, Carter Ballmer. It's mind blowing that he's Rule 5 eligible. He hasn't pitched since 2019, basically. Daniel Fetterman, Portes, Peak, Daniel Lloyd, Ryan Long, Peter Van Loon, Gene Pinto, Juan Nunez, Branovich. Like these are all guys like you're going to have to. I think, like, I'm not saying you have to protect them, but who do the Orioles value? Who are they going to add to that minor league protection list? Who are they going to leave off? Because some of those guys, like, I could see being snapped up pretty quickly in the minor league phase, where you can just take the guy for what, like $5,000, and there's no roster requirement. You can throw them in a DSL if you want to all year. It doesn't matter. They're yours for until you release them or they become free agents. So that's. I'm not concerned. Maybe I got too cocky from last year, and we're like, do you protect Hudson Haskin? Do you protect Kyle Branovich? I don't know. I'd hate to lose them. And the Rule 5 draft went by, and like you guys have mentioned, very few picks. So I don't know if I'm just getting like too cocky with this. Like, oh, no one really uses the Rule 5 draft that much anymore. We're good. I hope that's still the case, but it's the minor league phase that I'm going to be paying close attention to because I think that's going to hurt this year.
Agreed.
We'll go on now to American League Rookie of the Year voting, which ended in a bit of a disappointment for Orioles fans because Colton Cowser fell just short in a very close race, coming in second behind Yankees starter Luis Gil. Now, as we talked about last week, this Rookie of the Year class was a group of prospects that have pretty solid futures ahead of them, Cowser included. Some of them put together good years, but there wasn't that one player like Gunnar Henderson last year or Julio Rodriguez the year before where they checked every box. So a close race was not a surprise, but still kind of interesting the way things unfolded. And this is from the Baseball Writers Association of America. There was not a single player this year in American League Rookie of the Year voting that was named on every single ballot this year. Colton Cowser, meanwhile, was named on more total ballots than Gil, but Gil gets the edge because of the point system. So Gil gets 15 first place votes compared to Cowser's 13, and that helps push him over the top a little bit, even though Cowser appears on more ballots total and also outpaces Gil in second place votes and third place votes. Now, we could sit here and pick apart because we have the full list of how writers voted in order of first, second, third. We could sit here and pick that apart. I don't really have the energy to do that. I don't know about you guys. But let's just say this, which is that Cowser was probably more hurt by the ballots that he did not appear on altogether than he was by the ones where he didn't place first. But, chalk it up to whatever you want to, look at it with. Could it be Cowser's low batting average being the reason that he didn't win the award? Is it the fact that Gil was perhaps the most consistent pitcher on the best team in the American League, in the Yankees? Could it be big market bias? I don't think that's a thing, but I know some people do. Whatever it is, Cowser does not win Rookie of the Year, but I don't think it diminishes the fact that he had a very good rookie season and has a bright future ahead of him. That said, I think we can take a few minutes here to discuss these results. Bob, I'll start with you. How do you react to this decision by the writers?
Well, I think it's dumb. I think Cowser certainly deserved to win for a multitude of reasons. But it's the most annoying thing to me is awards are so meaningless. Like you said, it doesn't change a thing about Cowser's season and his development as a player. If it wasn't tied to earning an extra first round draft pick, I'd be like, oh, that's dumb. That sucks. And move on. And now I'm like getting mad because we should have got an extra first round draft pick here because I think he was clearly the better. And yeah, like you said, it was a weaker class. There was no standout in the American League side. National League was a tough race for a different reason. Cowser had 4 F4. Heel had 2.2. Gosh, the multitude of reasons. I've heard Cowser, he was too streaky. He had some really cold stretches. Well, Luis Heel from June 15th on had a 5.15 ERA with a 5.32 FIP and a 4.92 xFIP. So not even bad luck. Like, he was just bad for the last 3.5 months of the season. But that doesn't matter, I guess. I don't know. I was getting fired up just because they made it important. But then the voting is still dumb. So it's annoying to me.
Yeah, I completely agree there. And just the fact that, I don't know. You look at the NL, sure. Paul Skeens, Jackson Merrill, Jackson Churio, Shota Imanaga, 4th place with only 4 third place votes here. Like that, he was fantastic last year. NL was tough. AL, it was a 2-horse race. Like that was it. That's the reason when we talked about it, it was just those 2 guys because that was it. There's really, maybe if you want to make an argument for Mason Miller, okay, make your argument, but no, it was Healer Cowser. But I don't think you talk about the the streakiness or heel splits. I don't think voters aren't doing that kind of homework. A lot of these people aren't. They're not doing that homework and looking at it, and so like they don't care. They see. I don't think it's necessarily that it's strictly big market bias, but you see a Yankee pitcher, they won the division. He's got 15 wins and a rookie, even though he made his major league debut 3 years ago or something like that. He's an older guy, but still, again, voters not looking at that. They see 15 wins in a Yankee uniform, helped win the division, yada yada. He's the winner. They go, I pick him. I don't even think it's even us being like, oh, Orioles fans complaining about this. Cowser should have won because that's our guy. If I was in the NL, if I cared about the NL side, I think Jackson Merrill fully deserved it over Paul Skeens. Like I said when we debated this, both sides, it's really hard for me to go with the pitcher over the hitter because Jackson Merrill was a huge reason why the Padres were a playoff team. The Pirates are still bad because Paul Skeens is fantastic. Also, if I know fantasy baseball drafts for next year have already started and really getting into full swing here in a couple of days, draft Paul Skeens in the first round. Keep doing it. He's going super high in these drafts. Keep drafting Paul Skeens in the first round of the fantasy draft. Let me know when you want to draft and put some money up in those drafts because he's not a first round draft pick. Anyway, I shouldn't be this fired up either, but here we are. It's just annoying. The hitters, the Padres were in the playoffs because Jackson Merrill played a huge role in that. Colton Cowser was a regular in this Oriole. He played 153 games. He was fantastic. I don't even care. Let me pull up the numbers here. I really don't care about awards either. I only know Skubal won Cy Young because I'm looking at this article right now. But if you could have done Rookie of the Year, Cy Young, MVP, done a huge show on MLB Network last night, I watched 0-10 Kent State versus 2-9 Akron last night. I still would have watched that on CBS Sports Network, the Ocho or whatever it is. I still would have watched that over an award show because I don't care about awards. But Cowser, 4-award player, like you said, 153 games as a rookie, 24 home runs, a 120 WRC plus.
Great defense.
Yeah, a fantastic defense. We only care because of the draft pick. That's the only reason we're talking about this, and we care because of the draft pick, and more importantly, the bonus pool money that comes with the draft pick. But like Cowser is, a lot of people didn't like the pick back in 20 whatever when he was drafted.
21.
Yeah, yep, 2021. They didn't like the pick, right? A lot of people tried to write him off as he moved up the organization. He was in Aberdeen, struggling, as was Norby, as was Mayo in that same lineup. People tried to write him off. He gets to Norfolk, strikeout rate goes up. People tried to write him off. He gets to the major leagues that first time. It was bad. Yeah, it was bad. More people tried to write him off. Even now, why'd you swing at that pitch that he broke his hand on? Give it up. He swung because it was a disgusting pitch. Pitching Ninja had a great gif on that.
Yep.
Get over it. He swung. Who cares? He's trying to do his job. Baseball's hard. Hitting the baseball is the hardest thing to do in sports. People are still trying to write off Cowser because, like Bob said, the streakiness or whatever. Those numbers were unbelievable in his first year in the big leagues. He's going to be an Oriole, I hope, for a long time. He had a great year. Is there a lot he can improve on? Absolutely. Are there holes in his game? Absolutely. But got me fired up for another Cowser rant as usual. But yeah, he's going to be in this lineup. He's going to be an integral part in this lineup for years to come. And his peers voted him Rookie of the Year. He wins.
My favorite thing I saw was that Juan Soto's 8 months younger than the AL Rookie of the Year winner.
That is wild. I'm not gonna lie. It always does amaze me, like how young Juan Soto is, and he could be doing this for another 15 years at the top of the game. It's hate him all you want, but the guy is just a freak of nature.
Well, and hey, who knows? Hopefully this time next year we'll be talking about Kobe Mayo winning American League Rookie of the Year and the Orioles getting that extra pick in the 2025 or the 2026 draft. But they're not going to get that this year from Cowser winning Rookie of the Year. Nonetheless, though, still a great rookie season for him. And as I'm sure we're going to continue to discuss, you should be excited about what he will contribute in the future. And we have more Orioles coverage coming for you later this week. We're going to talk about what is the big story on the Major League side of things, at least as of this recording, which is that the Orioles are again moving the left field wall. We might give that 5 minutes more coverage than we did the last wall move when we gave it 0 minutes coverage. So you're not going to want to miss that. We'll also break down the Arizona Fall League. That'll be on later this week. In the meantime, you can check us out on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, and YouTube. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. Nick has few new articles out that you're going to want to check out. And you can catch us over at Patreon. As I mentioned at the top of the show, you have the opportunity now to sign up as a paying member for as little as $3 a month or give a gift subscription to an Orioles family member or friend this offseason. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, presented by BetOnline and part of the Believe Podcast Network. Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to discuss the Orioles adjusting the left field wall for the second time in 3 years as they bring it in a little bit, though not as far in as it used to be. But we're going to give you an extensive breakdown of the Arizona Fall League as well, including which Orioles prospects stood out during their time in Arizona. But first, Orioles on the Verge is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, and college basketball, NHL to UFC and MMA. Head to BetOnline today. Get on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. Bob, Nick, I feel like things were getting a little bit interesting at the end of the last episode. I think you guys were letting out a little bit of emotion about the American League Rookie of the Year race. How are you feeling now?
It's been a few days, so I'm still pissed. No, we just finished recording like 2 minutes ago, but yeah, Colton Cowser, you got screwed, man. I don't know what else to say.
It's done. It's whatever. Let's go sign a starting pitcher. Let's go have some fun this offseason.
Well, and one thing that is going to be talked about a lot this offseason, because maybe it will or maybe it won't affect the Orioles' ability to attract players through free agency, is their decision to once again adjust the left field wall dimensions at Camden Yards. You might recall that a few years ago, they moved the left field wall back, citing at the time an extreme advantage for right-handed hitters. And for the most part, it had its intended effect. Camden Yards, which had historically been a hitter's park, all of a sudden became much more neutral. And in fact, maybe even tilted a little bit towards pitchers in some cases. Now, though, the Orioles deciding that they're going to readjust the dimensions once again. As the Orioles announced last week, the wall will move in as much as 20 feet in some places, closer to home plate. In others, it's going to be as little as 9 feet. The perhaps not the most important thing, but the thing that might be the most uniform to grasp is the height of the wall, which is going to go down by 5 feet in left field and just over 6 feet in left center. So what we're looking at basically is an adjustment of 13 feet in some places, or excuse me, 5 feet in height, with as much as 20 feet in some places or as little as 9 and others. So just to give an example here, the dimension that previously would have been 386 down the left field corner is now going to be 373 as that moves in a little bit here. And I'm not even sure I'm reading this graphic correctly, but regardless, the wall is moving in a bit. And because the wall got so much reaction in just about everywhere but this podcast, the last time that it was moved back, we thought we would take a little bit more time this time around to discuss the wall. First of all, what we thought of the correction and how that played out over the couple of seasons it was in place. But now how we're seeing this adjustment after Mike Elias described the initial move back of the wall as an overcorrection. Is it going to make the ballpark more hitter-friendly? It probably will, but to what extent? And how is it going to affect the Orioles attracting free agents? So let's start with the first point first. And Bob, I'll go to you. What did you think of Camden Yards and the configuration with the deeper left field wall?
I thought, at the end of the day, both teams are hitting the same dimension, same stadium. So, I thought it made sense at the time to move it back. I do think my biggest, at the end of the day, it wasn't that big of a deal to me, but my biggest thing was how high the wall was. I like seeing home run robberies at the fence, so having that super high wall was kind of a little bit annoying, and I do like that they've kind of found a happy medium. Maybe they overdid it the first time, bring it in a little bit more, lower the fences a little bit so that you can see those home run robberies again. Obviously, it's going to help right-handed hitters and hitters in general. It's going to hurt pitchers a little bit. Like I think I saw Sarah say Dean Kramer would have given up 11 more home runs over the past few years with the new dimensions. So, that'll be interesting to see. But, yeah, it was way too short before. It was like a joke before. And then it was kind of became a joke the other way. And now hopefully it's just a little more what they want, a neutral, help out the pitchers a little bit, but still have Kobe Mayo be able to hit 40 bombs a year to left field at Camden Yards.
Yeah, I don't think about this much. I do think it's kind of, I don't know. I do think moving it around so much is a little, okay, do we really need to be doing this? I don't want this like set a precedent for like other teams doing the same thing. And not saying what the Orioles are doing is right or wrong either, but I don't know. Just I thought it was unique. It hurt. Yeah, sure. It might have literally killed Ryan Mountcastle's spirit to play the game of baseball. But you know what? Sometimes you got to make sacrifices. No, but like it's. I don't think it. I want to see the home run numbers. I think I've seen articles and all the discussion about oh, Ryan Mountcastle, of course, lost 11 home runs. Adley lost a couple of home runs. You see the numbers of guys who lost home runs, but like, what would it be with these new dimensions? I don't know if we've seen that or if people talk about that other than like Eno's tweet that Bob referenced about Dean Kramer specifically. I would like to see more about like with the new dimensions, specifically how much does it help Ryan Mountcastle? Like, are we still trying to trade him? Should he be super happy? Like, or what? I don't know. It's fine. Like, if you want to move it in a little bit. It was extreme. I will give them that. And my only thing when I first saw that, because I was going to bring this up last week when we were talking about free agency and the offseason. We know the Orioles want a right-handed hitting outfielder, right? It doesn't appear as if, at least I don't feel as confident anymore, that Santander is going to be back in an Orioles uniform. So that seems like a good spot when you got guys like Teoscar Hernandez and Tyler O'Neill and some other right-handed hitting guys who could play right field for this team when they're available. Seems like a good opportunity. At least they're at least good options to replace Santander, unless you're banking on Heston Kjerstad being the Santander replacement from the go, which I don't think is very smart. But either way, my thought was, all right, is how much more difficult is it going to be to convince Teoscar Hernandez or Tyler O'Neill to sign with the Orioles, knowing that right field wall is there, or left field wall is there? So hopefully, maybe, it might hurt some pitchers like Kramer. It may hurt Grayson Rodriguez a little bit. Like, it may hurt those right-handed pitchers, but maybe some of these right-handed hitters that the Orioles are targeting, maybe they see that news and they're like, okay, I was skeptical. I was about signing with you, but I'll talk with you now. If that's something that helps, sure, go for it.
When it comes to Mountcastle, like, yeah, I'm sure that hurt his numbers a little bit. At the end of the day, dude stopped pulling the ball in general, so that's not going to really do you any favors. And maybe the wall had something to do with that mentally, and I don't know. No one knows other than the hitting coaches that are gone and him now. So, yeah, I don't know. It's ultimately you're still going to have to go out there and play in the same park. I'm more curious what they're going to do with the gap between they said they're not filling it out with seats, so the gap, at least this season, the gap between the new wall and the newer wall, that'll be interesting.
I'm gonna go sit down there when I just can't take a meltdown bullpen outing anymore. No, wanted to pull up some numbers here that friend of the show Andy Koska over the Baltimore Banner site, and this kind of gives us a good perspective on how much Camden Yards changed when the dimensions were moved back, which was before the 2022 season. In a 3-year rolling sample from 2019 to 2021, Camden Yards featured the third highest park factor at 105. Over the next 3 years after the wall moved back, the rolling park factor dropped to 99. Now the league average is at 100. The home run factor, though, dropped much more, down to 93. And for right-handed hitters, this is really what's key. The home run park factor for righties from 2022 to 2024 was 79, fourth lowest among major league parks. Before that, though, it had been the highest home run metric for right-handed hitters at 125 from 2019 to 2021. I know you could look at that and say the Orioles had some really bad pitchers over those 3 seasons, but that alone doesn't explain the drastic change in those metrics. So I would really like to know 2 things from the Orioles side, and I doubt that we'll ever really get this answer from them. And that is, 1, what is the ideal park factor? What numbers are they looking at? Even if they're even looking at park factors, what's the ideal range for them? And 2, why now? Do you feel like 3 years is was 3 years always the point where you thought, okay, that's when we're gonna have the large enough sample size and we'll know whether or not we need to move the wall in or maybe even move it back again? Because Mike Elias has said for the last few years the dimensions are still subject to change or something to that effect. So there were signs that this could happen. But why now? It was 3 years the sample size they were looking for. Did they feel like maybe that took some of the intimidation factor for pitchers coming to Baltimore, but maybe went too far in the opposite direction for hitters? Or are they looking at the way the organization is lining up right now, realizing they've gone so heavy on left-handed hitters that they want to make sure that anyone they bring through the system that's a right-handed hitter is still going to have a shot to get home runs out. And no, because I know the knee-jerk side of me thought about this, I'm pretty sure it has nothing to do with that long fly ball that Jordan Westburg hit in the bottom of the eighth of game one of the divisions or the wild card round. That didn't have anything to do with it. But if the thought crossed your mind for a momentary second, I don't blame you because it crossed my mind.
Yeah, my bet is they can't do anything with the right field wall, pretty much. And I'm guessing they just want it to be as neutral of a park as possible. And that, I don't know, that seems like a solid baseline for an analytically charged group to figure out what to do from there. So that'd be my best guess. But yeah, it's a great question. Why the tinkering? Why the messing around so much so frequently? But I'd love to know the answer. But other than speculating, not much we can say.
It's because they love this offense and it wasn't performing. And so they're saying, look, we're not changing anything. We've got Kobe Mayo and these guys coming up, and we're going to keep mashing. You know, if Dean Kramer gives up 11 more home runs, so be it, because we're going to hit 15 more home runs. This lineup, we need it to get back to earlier year levels and perform. I don't know. I don't know. I do like that point, though. I could see where it is a very let's say for the sake of conversation, this was all very innocent, and that it was extreme. And like Zach said, yeah, there were some really awful pitchers, but at the same time, that does not fully explain the park factor issue there. And so they say, hey, this is fair that we should make it a little bit more neutral. And they thought they had the dimensions right, but I don't know, climate change, crazy things, whatever, ball changes, all that plays a part into it. And then they realized, yeah, they did overcorrect. And now you're again attempting to make it a little bit more neutral. I like that point. You know, let's go with that and say there was no, ill intent. There's no funny business. It's just trying to get to a more neutral position, which I think is fair. But I don't know. The whole AL East this year is going to be mind blowing. We don't need to go deeper because we could do an entire 3 hours on this. But like, does it change your offseason plans now? Do you still want to heavily target these lefties? Like I said last week, I want all the lefties. Give me 2 lefty aces. Like, who do you target as far as the hitters are concerned? The right-handed bat, whatever. Is it easier now? Like the Rays. I mean, you got to think about the Rays playing at the Yankees minor league stadium, which apparently has the exact same dimensions as Yankee Stadium. And so now you got to think about that. Like it's AL East teams in general are going to have we'll say fun 2025 season with trying to figure out all these new ballparks that they're going to be playing in.
All I know is that without the wall, I don't think Michael Kay is going to have anything to complain about when he comes to Camden Yards next year. And frankly, most national broadcasters won't. So let's see what they come up with. But I don't listen to those feeds very often.
We don't get to hear John Smoltz talk for 3 hours about the wall when the Orioles get on Fox next year. Like,
it will be nice to not have to hear about the wall. Well, at least
they will about how they change it.
Yeah. But gosh, it was annoying how literally anytime we were on a national broadcast, that's all they talked about.
With that, now we'll go and talk about the Arizona Fall League, which just wrapped up recently. Surprise Seguros, which is where the Orioles prospects played, or the team the Orioles prospects played for this year, had a very successful run with Roberto Mercado, who managed Bowie last year as their manager, going 18-10 and making it to the AFL Finals, although they lost that game. Still a very successful season for them as a team. Now, the important part, though, which is how the Orioles players performed while they were there. And we'll throw out the usual caveat, which is that Arizona Fall League stats don't really mean a whole lot for a variety of reasons. Small sample size. They play in a climate that is heavily skewed towards hitters. On and on it goes. But because of StatCast and because of a few other things, we can take a little bit deeper look into how some of those players performed and know a little bit more about what went on there. So, for instance, Creed Willems performed extremely well in the Arizona Fall League this year by the statistical measures that you would usually look at, but the batted ball data for him was excellent. Douglas Hodo, an outfielder, was ranked by a lot of measures as one of the best base runners in the Arizona Fall League. And then that's before you even get into some of the counting stats or some of the individual outings that Orioles pitching prospects had during their time there. And Jake Cunningham, who I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit tonight, got off to a good start, but unfortunately did not appear in many games in the Fall League. So we'll dive into those players tonight, but I want to start with Willems because he put together a really nice 2024 season. You thought that, after over 100 games in the minors, his season might be finished, but ultimately he goes out to Arizona, picks up where he left off offensively, and the numbers themselves are good, but the StatCast data with his batted ball or his exit velocities and some of the batted ball data was excellent. So, Nick, I know you spent a lot of time diving into that. Can you give us a little bit more background on Willems?
Yeah, I think for me, with his AFL performance, I think he's becoming a bigger and bigger prospect in this system. And forget about like where does he play? How does he fit in with Adley or Basayo in the organization? I don't care about that right now because he's 21 years old. He's a catching prospect that just got to AA at the end of last year, and he had a really solid AFL tour. So the diehards know who he is, but I think on a national level, Creed Willems is going to start getting a lot more attention this year because the counting stats were cool. 80 at bats, 338 average, a near 900 OPS, the high exit velos. That was all great. But for me, what stood out was what I pointed out, and we talked about numerous times throughout the year, the strikeout rate. His strikeout rate was like 28% in 2022 and 2023, nearly identical. This past year, when he was in high A, it was 21%. Small sample in double A was down to 19%. In the AFL, he had 80 at bats. So that was like third or fourth on the team. Significant number of at bats for a small sample, if that makes sense. But 14 strikeouts and 80 at bats. So a 17 to 18% strikeout rate. I think he's maturing. He's talked about the fact that he is maturing on and off the field. He's gotten in better shape. He corrected his vision. He lost the weight. He's apparently working out with the Holiday family. I think we're seeing the version of Creed Willems that the Orioles were hoping to see when they gave him $1 million out of the high school ranks in the draft. And look, he played a grueling position behind the plate across a full season, 2 different levels. Then he goes out west and plays for another 6 weeks and has a super strong AFL experience. So I think he's entering 2025 in a really, I think, fantastic spot going into next year.
Yeah, a lot to be happy about with Creed in the AFL. Yeah, it's a hitting environment and the pitching's not great, but even that, he was above average. And again, he was probably on the younger side of the guys there. I saw that, speaking of MLB Pipeline, the last episode we talked about them. I guess that's our new go-to. I saw that Jonathan Mayo, former guest of the show, put out his AFL All-Stars for each position, and Creed Willems was the runner-up at catcher. No other Orioles were mentioned, but thought that was a nice shout there, and showed off the wheels based off some clips I saw. I think he had an inside the park home run and a triple, so nice to see that. The exit velo is great. I was also going to point out the strikeout rate, really good. So just seeing the ball well, making good contact, and just building on the year that he had. It's really cool to see. So hopefully he can come back AA in 2025 and just take off from there.
We saw Willems. One thing we had pointed out with Willems when he got promoted to AA last season was that he has had the pattern with him before has been that he'll get to a new level and he'll struggle, but then all of a sudden he'll master it. And when he masters it, he really masters it. What we saw, though, when Willems went to Bowie was that while his production dipped from what it had been at Aberdeen, it didn't go completely off the table. He held his own there. And after this successful run in the Arizona Fall League, how much confidence do you think that gives him going back to Bowie next year, knowing that he has that and what was a pretty solid run at AA over the final month and a half or so of last season on his resume now?
Yeah, I think that's huge. Like I feel like he's already a pretty confident player. And so I feel like this experience was really good because, like Bob said, I imagine he was on the much younger side. I'm sure you can pull up Baseball Reference and the age is probably there. If they have AFL stats, they'll show you the ages as well. But I'm scared to do it right now because it'll crash my computer while I'm trying to stream and go on that website. But yeah, and I imagine the AFL All Star at catcher was probably is it Tyron Lorenzo, probably from the Dodgers or Tigers organization. One of them, I don't know.
I can't remember, but yeah.
Yeah, his brother, he got a lot of hype in the AFL. His brother is, of course, in the Orioles system, Joshua Lorenzo. So not mad at that. But yeah, I think Creed going into 2025, like I said, he's going to start getting a lot more national attention. And he just had that really good year in front of scouts from every other organization. So I know I just said forget about what his role is in the org, forget about where he plays. If a trade is on the table, a lot of teams saw him do some damage out there in Arizona, and I think it sets not only Creed Willems, which is most important, up for 2025 and his future, but I think it also set the Orioles up pretty nicely.
Yeah, I just pulled up some of the age data for the Arizona Fall League. Willems is 21. He turned 21 back in June. Meanwhile, the average age of a pitcher in the Arizona Fall League per Baseball Reference, 23 years and 3 months. And then the average age for a hitter is 22 years and 2 months. So Willems coming in below average for hitters by a little less than a year, and then by about 2 years compared to pitchers, which is really the number you would want to look at. And speaking of pitchers, I do want to get into the Orioles group of pitchers that was out there in a minute. But before we move on, two different stories here with outfielders that were in the Arizona Fall League representing the Orioles. Douglas Hodo pretty much had a full run in Arizona and showed a little bit of what made him intriguing in 2024. Runs very well, good plate approach. I think that there are still concerns about the strikeouts, but overall, I think he's continuing to make strides in the right direction. Jake Cunningham came out of the gate really hot and then was not heard from again after 6 games. And in fact, we've been trying to figure out what happened with Cunningham. I guess it was an injury, but we don't know the full circumstances or exactly why he didn't play. But for that very brief window of time, Cunningham was hitting the ball hard and showing some power. But again, very limited time in Arizona. So what were your impressions of those two guys?
Cunningham, yeah, it's a shame. One of the things when he was drafted was, can he stay healthy? We saw him go through some injury issues during the season. Obviously, seems like that happened again. But, while he was out there, he did perform pretty well. Douglas Hodo continues to just be really solid and continue to improve. Yeah, the strikeout rate is ridiculous. 35% around there. Maybe a little bit less because he walks so many times. 19 walks to 21 strikeouts, 57 at bats, a 443 on base percentage with a 228 batting average. It's pretty ridiculous. But he also had 6 doubles, a triple, a home run, so hitting for power, 9 steals. Just continued his great season. It could be Zach Watson, or it could be a breakout of sorts, at least for like a backup outfielder type. So very happy for him. I don't know if it means all that much ultimately, but just a great way to end the season.
Yeah, the thing with Hodo, he had a great year last year. Gets moved up to Bowie. You routed off the numbers in the AFL. I love the walks. Those 19 walks in 20-something games is pretty nice. He's got the speed. He's a good defender. The Orioles are pretty loaded at center field in the upper minors, but he can play all 3 outfield spots. The thing that gets me with Hodo, I keep going back to, he got moved up to Bowie, and no one announced it. Like typically you get the even the minor guys, they're like, hey, Molesky, this guy's getting promoted. You can go ahead and tweet this. No tweets about Hodo getting promoted. So I don't know if that means anything, but it stays in the back of my mind. Cunningham, yeah, it just continues to be so frustrating because, and again, I haven't seen this mentioned anywhere. I'm assuming you guys haven't either. No idea why he played in 6 games and then did not play anymore. Maybe I'm hoping it was like a tweaked hamstring, rolled an ankle, something minor, but like that's gonna linger. And they're like, hey, just go home. We'll pick this back up in February. We'll see you in Sarasota. Here's your offseason plan. I'm hoping that's the case, but we could also get a random Tuesday afternoon tweet that says he had a torn ACL surgery, and he had surgery to repair that in November. But he's going to be out for a while. I don't know. Hopefully it's just a minor injury that they're like, let's just be precautionary and send you home, shut it down. But yeah, continue to be pretty frustrating for Cunningham, though. Injuries just continue to pile up.
Yeah, hopefully he is back soon, and whatever prevented him from playing out the Arizona Fall League season does not present a long-term concern. And now for the pitchers, the Orioles had an interesting group of guys. Some a little bit on the older end, like Tyler Burtz. Others very young, like Juan Rojas, who's only 20 years old. Burtz, meanwhile, 26. But most of the pitchers that were out there, maybe with the exception of Rojas, I think you would classify as pure relief arms. But some of those guys managed to build off of what they did during the regular season and look pretty successful. Zane Barnhart put together a nice run in Arizona. And then in the case for Rojas, Burtz, and Preston Johnson, I think it was a little bit of an opportunity to make up for lost time with injuries that they've had in the last few years. And that's really the key thing. And you can look at their stat lines and pick them apart and find some mixed things. For Rojas, the walks were a little bit high. Johnson never quite got the strikeouts up. Burtz pitched pretty well, but that's a really small sample size, only 4 innings. So looking at that group, just kind of give me your thoughts on what stood out, good or bad.
Yeah, I think, they didn't send like the cream of the crop here on the pitching side. I don't think a lot of teams do really anymore. But the relievers, Birch, Roth, Barnhart, they only pitched 4 or 5 innings each. Did pretty well with the opportunities they had. Other than Roth, I think had one bad outing where he gave up like 7 runs. And as far as Preston Johnson and Juan Rojas, not the best numbers, but they at least got the innings in. Juan Rojas gets 18 extra innings in against competition older than him. Preston Johnson gets 12 more innings. Coming off his injury to build on to next year, I think he could be a potential breakout. But yeah, not a whole lot to say. Some good work put in. I think maybe Zane Barnhart showed out the best, just with the 7 strikeouts from 5 1/3 innings, and stuff looked pretty good. So he continues to be an underrated relief arm. But yeah, not a ton to say on the pitching side.
No, not really. But I did in the 45 minutes before we came on. I pulled up these reports here from the AFL that we got. So I've got some numbers. These are the numbers that I like. Forget the stat lines, but we have some harder data, and these are super small sample size because not every ballpark in the Arizona Fall League has StatCast. So again, if you pitch 5 innings, we might have 3 innings worth of data or 2 innings worth of data here. But I mean, some of the guys, Tyler Birch, yeah, he is what he is. He has a 106 stuff plus overall. Fastball set 95 miles per hour in the Arizona Fall League. We'll see what happens with him. I could see him getting plucked in the minor league phase 05 draft, though, to be completely honest. May Freddie Galvis continue to live on, though, in this organization. Preston Johnson, I think, was just about the innings. It's 5-6 pitches. His nickname is Beef. He had Tommy John surgery. I'm going to wait until we get like a 2025 sample. This Arizona Fall League stint for Preston Johnson was just getting innings that he needs. Rojas was interesting. He's still only 20 years old, and he was the 4th piece in the Jorge Lopez deal. One of those guys is an all-star for the Orioles. Another one showed some pretty good stuff in his first stint in the major leagues this year. The other one is now at least according to MLB Pipeline, a top 10 prospect in the organization. So I just consider Rojas like a bonus here. If he works out, fantastic. Looking at only 5 innings he had in a StatCast spark in the Arizona Fall League, his cutter had a 64% whiff rate, in like 5 innings of sample size there. So take that for what you will, but pretty solid. He's 20 years old and has had multiple major injuries since the Orioles acquired him. So just hope he gets a fully healthy season in 2025. The two guys, though, I really liked, and I want to look at here, though, were Zane Barnhart, like Bob said. Numbers were great. In a 3-inning StatCast sample, so this is very minuscule, but his slider, which I think was the second most used pitch, had a 57% whiff rate and has a 111 stuff plus. So that is a plus slider. He's also like 5 foot something, but gets massive extension, like 6'7" extension, which is Grayson Rodriguez has like a 7-foot extension for reference. And Zane Barnhart's 5 foot something. So I don't know. He's not going to go in my top 50, but Zane Barnhart is a name that I am super pumped to watch in 2025. Houston Roth is a guy that I'm so confused. He's Rule 5 eligible. Obviously didn't get protected. Minor league phase of the Rule 5 draft, though, I think is a different story. I do want to know if he gets protected or not, because if they don't, that obviously tells you exactly what his future is. It's nothing, right? But like I mentioned a couple weeks ago, Roth, they fully moved him to the bullpen in Bowie this year. 48 innings, a 3.35 ERA, FIP and XFIP pretty much in line there. 32% strikeout rate. Nestor Herman was the only pitcher in full season ball with the Orioles who had a higher swinging strike rate in the organization. Roth had a great year in 2024. And in Arizona, I'm seeing 4 pitches that all have 100 to 106 stuff plus. The fastball is an above average offering. He's very, very close to having 4 above average offerings. He's got me thinking, like, is there something there with Houston Roth? Or is it just not clicky for him? I don't know. He's the big question mark for me that went out to Arizona this year.
Yeah, that's a good point with Roth, because he's been in the system for a while, and I think that, to some it's easy to look at him and label him as just an org guy, but good organizational depth and the stuff. Maybe there is more than what meets the eye, and I agree with you. I'm really curious to see, is he going to be protected in the minor league phase? Because to me, that's telling. If the Orioles do protect him, it means that they didn't believe that, they were willing to take the risk that he might be chosen in the major league phase, but that they're prepared to bring him back in the minors next year, have a role for him, stretch him out more, and see what he can provide. If he's not protected in the minor league phase, though, it doesn't mean I'm willing to write him off completely, but I'm going to need to see a lot more. Now, I'm going to put this question out there because I think this is a good place to wrap up. And Nick touched on it by mentioning his personal top 50. We're going to get to work on updating our list soon and pushing out the off-season update, which if you're a patron, you will actually hear in the form of daily episodes, countdown style, starting probably in the next month-ish, month and a half, somewhere in there. If you're not a patron, you'll have to wait until spring training starts to get that list. Are there any? Willems is a slam dunk top 50 guy. And I don't remember exactly where Hodo was in our personal list. Juan Rojas has typically been towards the back end. I know Hodo was getting a little bit more consideration from the three of us towards the end of last season, but did anything in the Arizona Fall League, whether it was performance or just a mere fact that the player was sent there, maybe change the way you view them in the top 50 rankings?
That's a good question. I'd say Hodo just continued to to push himself in consideration for the back of my top 50. And then I'd say Willems, he's just continuing to strengthen the case that he already had made with his regular season. So I don't think anything's really changed, but no one really hurt themselves as far as the way I'm thinking when we do these lists.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of these guys, like Preston Johnson, Juan Rojas, it's just about innings. That's strictly what it is. I'm trying to pull up our list real quick here and see where Creed Willems is ranked. I have my list. So I had Creed Willems 19 on my personal list. He ended the year for us. Oh, he's up to number 14. You guys jacked him up on y'all's list. I was gonna say I think I am gonna bump up Creed Willems a few more spots. Like I said, I think he's gonna get a lot more attention nationally starting in 2025. As Baseball America's already rolling out their top 30s, I imagine he ranks pretty highly on a couple lists, especially with his AFL experience. So I could see him moving up some spots, but Juan Rojas is a back end top 50 guy. I think he kind of stays there. There's no one else, though, that I'm kind of really moving up. Jake Cunningham, like I said, continues to frustrate me, and I don't really know what to do with him. But other than that, I think Bob put it best. It's consistency. A lot of these guys just maintained, but it's because they maintained growth that they had in the 2024 regular season, which is a good sign.
Yeah, I think you're both right in your points. With Willems, I suspect you're going to hear a lot more buzz nationally. I think that sometimes with prospects like Willems, we might be a little bit further ahead on the hype than national outlets. Sometimes we're right, sometimes we're not. But for the most part, I think that this is going to be a case where now the national outlets start to catch up to Willems, even if our own individual rankings don't really change that much on him. Rojas has pretty consistently been in the 45 to 50 range. For me, I see no reason to budge him in one direction or the other. And then for Hodo, I would say that probably since June or July of this past season, he's been in that kind of 48 to 52, 53 range when I've been putting together my personal list. And probably again not going to move significantly. I could see him on my personal top 50, but it's going to be down the list of ways. And honestly, I think that the Arizona Fall League, other than the mere fact he was there, didn't really change my evaluation too much.
It's just good to get data, some hard data on these guys. That's the biggest thing for me. I don't think it's really designed to make sweeping changes or judgments about guys. It's just, confirming some things we didn't know when we finally get data on a 20-year-old low A guy. And that was a good experience. No one got, never mind. I was going to say no one got hurt. Jake Cunningham. He might have, but no, hopefully serious injuries, at least on the pitcher front, and some guys who are super interesting, and hopefully 2025s are healthy seasons for them, and we can have better, more full discussions about these guys, hopefully rising up our ranks next year.
Absolutely. And with that, we will be back next week. We will have a new show for you before the Thanksgiving holiday. You're not going to want to miss that. In the meantime, you can check us out on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, and YouTube. And Bob, I understand you're on Blue Sky now, right?
Me and the podcast. I'm operating both, but we are on Blue Sky. It's a thing, so trying to make our presence known wherever we can.
You can catch it also on YouTube and at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. We've been pumping out new articles this offseason. You're going to want to make sure you're subscribed to that. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to our Patreon community. You can sign up for as little as $3 a month as a paying member. And then at higher levels, have access to bonus daily coverage. And as a reminder of two things, one, we are going to have our top 50 prospect updates rolling out soon. And the other is that you can sign up the Orioles fan in your life, whether it's a friend, family member, or both, for a Patreon membership as a gift subscription this year. We've posted that on our Patreon feed, so if you're a current member, you should see that. Consider giving that as a gift to a friend or family member. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, presented by BetOnline and part of the Believe Podcast Network.